Hello, hello, and welcome back to Learning English with Podcast Conversation. I'm your host, Tony, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. We've got a really fascinating topic lined up, one that I think everyone, everywhere can relate to. And with me, as always, is my brilliant co-host, Jenny. Hey, Jenny, how are you today?
Hi, Tony. I'm doing great, thank you. Super excited to talk about this one. It's a topic that's, a bit mysterious sometimes, right? Like, can you really tell? I'm really curious to dive in. For our listeners, today we're talking about something super interesting and useful. How to spot a liar in 5 seconds. Now, that sounds a bit like magic, doesn't it?
It does, Jenny. It sounds like something from a spy movie, but actually it's more about understanding human behavior and paying close attention. It's not about being a detective and judging everyone, but more about improving your observation skills, which can be really helpful in everyday life, whether it's with friends, family, or even at work. It's also a fantastic way to learn new English vocabulary about emotions and behavior.
Absolutely. And for our English learners, don't worry. We'll explain everything clearly. We'll use simple examples and fun stories. So, Tony, let's jump right into our first main point. When people think about spotting a liar, they often think about body language, right? What are some of the most common body language signs that people talk about?
Body language. It's like a secret language that everyone speaks, even if they don't know it. One of the first things many people mention is eye contact. You know, some people believe that if someone avoids your eyes, they are lying. Or, on the other hand, if they stare at you too much, it also might be a sign they're trying too hard to seem honest. It's a bit tricky, isn't it?
Oh, it's very tricky, because some people just naturally avoid eye contact because they're shy. Or maybe in some cultures, direct eye contact is not polite. So it's not a clear sign by itself. But if someone usually makes good eye contact, and then suddenly they're looking at the floor or staring at the ceiling when you ask a specific question, that change can be a clue. What else, Tony? What about hands?
Great point, Jenny. The change is key, and yes, hands are a big one. People often talk about fidgeting. That means moving your hands or feet a lot, like tapping your fingers, shaking your leg, or playing with something. It can be a sign of nervousness or discomfort, and sometimes that discomfort comes from telling a lie. Also, touching their face, like rubbing their nose or covering their mouth, is often mentioned. It's almost like their body is trying to stop the lie from coming out.
Oh, I've definitely seen that one. My little brother, bless his heart, when he was younger, if he ate a cookie he wasn't supposed to, he'd always cover his mouth and look around nervously. It was so obvious. Or sometimes, people might touch their neck or collar. It's like their body feels hot from the stress of lying. So to summarize body language basics, look for changes in eye contact, fidgeting, and touching the face or neck. But remember, it's just a clue, not a definitive proof.
Excellent summary, Jenny. Now, let's move to our second main point, which is verbal clues. Because it's not just what they do with their body, but how they speak and what they say. What do you think, Jenny, are some verbal signs that might pop up when someone isn't being entirely truthful?
Oh, this is fascinating. One common sign is a change in their voice. Maybe their voice gets a little higher, or they start speaking faster or slower than usual. It's like their vocal cords are also feeling the stress. Another big one is giving too much detail. If you ask a simple question, and they give you a super long story with lots of tiny, unnecessary details, it could be a sign. They might be trying to convince you by quote-unquote, their story is true with extra information.
That's so true. It's like they've rehearsed it. Or, on the other hand, sometimes liars might give too little detail, being very vague. If you ask, "Where were you?" and they just say, "Out." No more information, no details. It's almost like they don't want to add anything that you can check later. Also, something I've noticed is when people avoid using I or me. Instead of saying, "I went to the store," they might say, "The store was visited." It makes the statement feel less personal, less like they did it.
Wow, Tony, that's a really subtle one about avoiding I and me. I hadn't thought of that, but it makes sense. It's like they're trying to distance themselves from the lie. Another thing is when they repeat your question before answering. For example, you ask, "Did you finish your homework?" And they say, "Did I finish my homework?" Yes, I finished my homework. That delay, repeating the question, can be them buying time to think of an answer or to prepare their lie.
Ah, yes, the buying time tactic. My niece used to do that when she wanted to play a few more minutes on her video game. Did you brush your teeth, Uncle Tony? She'd repeat it, giving herself an extra second to decide if she was going to say yes or no. So, to recap verbal clues. Look for changes in voice, too much or too little detail, avoiding personal pronouns, and repeating questions. Again, these are clues, not guarantees.
Exactly! And this leads us perfectly into our third super important point. Context is key. Tony, why is it so important not to just look at one sign and immediately think, aha, liar?
This is crucial, Jenny. Imagine someone is in a job interview. They might be avoiding eye contact, fidgeting, and their voice might be a little shaky. Does that mean they're lying about their experience? Probably not. They're just nervous. The situation itself can cause these signs. So if you see one or two signs, it doesn't mean someone is lying. You have to think about the situation. Is it a stressful situation for them naturally? Is this person always a bit shy or quiet?
That's a fantastic example, Tony. My friend, for instance, always touches her hair when she's thinking deeply, or when she's talking about something serious. If I didn't know her well, I might think she was lying, but it's just her normal behavior. So the best way to use these clues is to compare someone's behavior now to their normal behavior. If someone usually makes great eye contact and then suddenly avoids it for a specific question, that's a bigger clue than for someone who always avoids eye contact.
Spot on, Jenny. You need to know their baseline, their normal way of acting and speaking. If you don't know the person well, it's much harder to tell. Also, different cultures have different norms. In some cultures, direct eye contact can be seen as aggressive, not a sign of honesty. So, context means the situation, the person's usual behavior, and their cultural background. It really makes the 5 seconds thing more of an initial observation than a final judgment, doesn't it?
Totally. It's like seeing a yellow traffic light. It tells you to slow down and pay attention, not to crash. So always ask yourself, is this behavior unusual for this person in this situation? That's your mental checklist for context. Now, onto our fourth point, emotional tells. How do emotions play into this, Tony?
Emotions are super interesting here, Jenny. Sometimes, when people lie, their emotions don't match what they're saying. For example, if someone is telling you really sad news, but they have a little smile on their face, that can be a red flag. Or, if they're saying something exciting, but their face is completely flat, showing no emotion, it's called incongruent emotions. When the emotion you see doesn't fit the words you hear.
Oh, that's so true. It's like their brain is trying to control the words, but their body or face is reacting differently. Sometimes, a liar might show a very quick, very small expression. We call them micro-expressions, that shows their true feeling, but it disappears very fast. Or, they might overdo an emotion. Like, if someone is telling a lie, they might act too angry or too surprised to make you believe them more. It feels a bit fake.
Yes, the overacting. It's like a bad actor on stage. They try too hard to convince you. And also, sometimes when someone lies, especially a bigger lie, there's a lot of mental work involved. They have to remember the lie, make sure it sounds believable, and remember not to contradict themselves. This can make them seem less natural, or their emotional responses can be delayed or just off. Have you ever seen someone try to look surprised when they already knew something, Jenny?
Oh, absolutely. My cousin once pretended to be shocked when we told her about a surprise party for her, but I saw her give a tiny, quick smile before she put on her shocked face. It was very brief, but I caught it. It's little things like that. So emotional tells. Look for emotions that don't match the words, or expressions that seem overdone or delayed. It's all about looking for that natural flow. And now, for our final and perhaps most important point, Tony, the big question. Can you really spot a liar in 5 seconds? What's the reality behind the title of our episode?
Excellent question, Jenny, and a very important one for our listeners. The truth is, spotting a liar in 5 seconds is a catchy title, but it's not a magic trick. You can't just look at someone for 5 seconds and know 100% if they're lying. That's impossible, and it's also not fair to people. What you can do in 5 seconds, or maybe a little longer, is observe initial red flags or clues. You can notice if something feels off or unusual. It's about getting a feeling or noticing a quick change.
Right. It's about initial observation, not instant judgment. In those first few seconds, you might notice that quick glance away, or a sudden change in their voice, or a slight fidget. These are not proof of a lie, but they are signals to pay more attention. It's like when you're driving and you see a small light come on in your car. It doesn't mean your car will stop right now, but it tells you to check it out. You need to investigate further, or at least keep observing.
Exactly. It's about gathering information. If you notice a few of these signs together, and they're unusual for that person in that situation, then it might be worth asking a follow-up question or just being a bit more aware. It's never about making a quick accusation. It's about being a better observer of human behavior. Remember, anyone can be nervous for many reasons, not just because they're lying.
That's super important to remember, Tony. It's a skill that you develop over time, not something you master instantly. And it's for understanding, not for becoming a judge. So those are our 5 main points. Body language basics, verbal clues, context is key, emotional tells, and the reality of the 5-second rule. Shall we share some personal stories or real-life examples now?
Absolutely, Jenny. I have a funny, lighthearted one. So, my nephew, he's about 6 years old. He loves chocolate. One day, I bought a big chocolate bar, and I told him, "This is for after dinner." I put it on the kitchen counter. Later, I came back, and the chocolate bar was, significantly smaller. It had clearly been opened, and some eaten. I asked him, very calmly, "Did you eat some of the chocolate bar, buddy?"
Oh, I know this story. What did he do?
Well, his eyes, which usually meet mine, darted to the left. He touched his nose, actually rubbing it quite hard, and then he said in a slightly higher voice than usual, "No, I didn't touch it." But then he started fidgeting with his hands like he was trying to hide them, and the chocolate was all over his face. Of course, it was a very obvious situation, but all the signs were there. It was cute, actually, and a perfect example of those tells happening all at once. Even for a little kid, the body and voice react.
Gee, that's a classic. And it shows how these things can appear, even in simple situations. I have an example that highlights the, quote, context is key point. I once had a colleague who was always very quiet and shy. She rarely made eye contact, even when telling the truth. One day, she was asked about a mistake at work, and she got very nervous. She started fidgeting a lot, spoke very softly, and avoided eye contact even more than usual. Some people immediately thought she was lying because of her behavior.
Ah, the poor colleague. So what happened? Was she lying?
No, she wasn't. We later found out she was just incredibly stressed and embarrassed about the mistake, even though it wasn't a big deal. Her behavior was just her extreme reaction to stress, not a sign of deception. If you only looked at the signs without knowing her usual shy personality and the stressful context, you could easily get it wrong. It really taught me the importance of knowing the person and the situation before jumping to conclusions.
That's a brilliant example, Jenny. It perfectly illustrates why we can't be too quick to judge. It's about observation, not accusation. Okay, so we've talked about a lot today. Let's try to bring it all together for our listeners with some key takeaways. Jenny, what's the first big lesson you think people should remember from our discussion?
My first takeaway is, be an observer, not a detective. Don't try to catch people in lies, but rather learn to observe and understand human behavior better. Look for patterns, and especially look for clusters of signs, not just one isolated behavior. If someone just fidgets, maybe they're cold. But if they fidget, avoid eye contact, and change their voice, then you have more to consider.
That's excellent, Jenny. My second takeaway is context is everything. As we discussed with your colleague, nervousness can look a lot like deception. Always consider the situation and the person's usual behavior. Ask yourself, is this behavior unusual for this person in this specific situation? If they are always shy, or if the situation is naturally stressful, those signs might mean something totally different.
And my third and final takeaway for today is, trust your gut but verify later. Your intuition, that gut feeling that something feels off, can be a useful starting point. If you feel uneasy, pay closer attention. But remember, it's just a feeling. Don't use it to accuse someone. Instead, Use it as a signal to observe more closely, perhaps ask more questions, or just be more aware. It's about being informed, not about being a judge.
Those are fantastic takeaways, Jenny. Observe, context, and trust your gut. Very clear and actionable. This has been such an insightful conversation, and I think it's not just about spotting liars, but about becoming more aware and empathetic observers of people in general, which is a wonderful skill to have in life, isn't it?
Absolutely, Tony. It makes you a better listener and a more understanding person. It's about seeking truth, not just finding lies. And for our English learners, I hope you picked up lots of new vocabulary and enjoyed hearing us discuss these real-life scenarios. Practice observing people around you, not to judge, but just to understand the fascinating world of human behavior.
Well said, Jenny. A huge thank you to you for joining me today and sharing your insights. And to all our wonderful listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Learning English with Podcast Conversation. We hope you found this episode helpful and engaging. Remember, practice these observation skills and keep practicing your English. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more great conversations, and leave us a comment below. What are some signs you look for? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep conversing, and keep spotting those interesting human behaviors.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.